We know that the Treasury has asked you to show how all this free trade will bring more value than any trade that is lost from the EU. Have you produced that?
Well, I don't accept the premise of the question because it makes the assumption that we will lose value from our trade with the European Union.
Well, we have to lose either the EU deal or the America deal,
No, we don't. No, we don't have to lose anything at all.
So you think we can have both?
We haven't begun our negotiations with the EU yet on a future free trade agreement. And we begin from a very good position of zero tariffs and absolute regulatory equivalence. So that it technically removes a lot of the barriers to difficulty. We are aiming that we will have a very open and comprehensive trading deal with the European Union. And our aim is to give all our businesses the same rights of access they have today. Now, how possible that will be, we won't know until we begin the negotiations in October. At the same time, we will want to see how we can get increased access to other markets, including the United States, but perhaps even more crucially, how we can work with countries like the United States to open up the global economy in things like services, which will matter a lot to the UK economy.
But your belief is that no value will be lost over losing the EU?
I hope that no value will be lost. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we're aiming for. And of course, it makes no sense to have an assumption that you'll be at one end of the spectrum rather than the other. So what we're aiming for is an open, liberal, comprehensive agreement with the European Union, which is in both our interests to have, both for European producers as well as British producers, and at the same time to have a good agreement with the United States and to open up the global economy. And the reason for that is the global economy is sluggish. Global trade's growing at only 1.3% at the present time. We must get that up because we've got to see a more open trading environment or our exporters will suffer.
Trade is abstract, it is complicated, and I know that you accuse us, the media, of obsessing over chicken, but the reason we talk about chicken is it's tangible. People actually understand that as an issue. So is it true that we will change our regulations, our food standards, to accommodate a deal with America?
We have no intentions of reducing our standards. We've said on a number of occasions that we think that British standards and protection for the consumer,
so you will
for the
then
environment, for the workers.
Rule out chlorine-washed chicken. It's a very simple thing.
There is no health issue with that. The European Union has said that is perfectly safe.
So we could accept that then?
The issue lies around some of the secondary issues of animal welfare. And it's perfectly reasonable for people to raise that, but it will come much further down the road. We will be looking at those issues.
Just give us a sense, because this is something that people can actually understand. Will you say it's fine, we don't need that regulation that the EU currently has, we will be prepared to accept whatever the chicken is washed in because we believe that is the right way to go, it makes food cheaper and it's a deal with the US?
We will want to ensure that the scientific advice that we have ensures proper protection for British consumers because dropping our standards is not the way for
right?
Britain to proceed.
The EU has a preventative strategy, so it doesn't believe that chlorine-washed chicken is the right thing to have in the EU. Will that change under Liam Fox's trade deal? Can you rule that out?
Well, I can rule out that we will be dropping our standards on consumer protection or environmental protection or on animal welfare. These are all perfectly reasonable things for people to look at. But in terms of where we will be on specifics by the time we finish a free trade agreement, which could be 2-3 years by the time it's concluded and implemented, depending on what happens with the rest of our relationship with the EU, it's too early to say. But you can say on a general principle that we are not going to be the low regulation alternative that some people have suggested.
Chicken is just obviously one of a list, and we could also be looking at GM crops. Will we say we will now accept GM crops? Will we be accepting hormone-fed beef, for example?
You're asking me the same question in a different way. These are elements that we will look at much further down. These are things that you look at in the agricultural section of an agreement.
But we could be in a process that will now accept GM crops or hormone-fed beef. That is somewhere we could be, right?
Well, we'll want to look at what does science tell us, what is the best protection for our consumers, what's the best protection for our environment, and myself and my colleagues will look at that across government. And we're not going to jump to conclusions right now because that wouldn't be an appropriate way to carry out a negotiation.
I mean, the US wants us to stop subsidising Rolls-Royce engines. They're made in Derby. Will we do that to help win a US trade deal?
Well, it's a negotiation, and we'll want to see what we can get from the American side. They'll want to see what they can get from us, and we're not going to be giving anything away that would be detrimental to the UK producers, our economy or our consumers. Why would we do that?
Because the whole idea of Brexit, the line that we were fed, was taking back control. Now we're in a position where you cannot rule out that we might have chlorine-washed chicken, you cannot rule out we might have GM crops, you cannot rule out beef-fed or hormone-fed beefs. Why are we in a position where we seem to be going along with whatever a superpower does, whatever principles or standards or lower standards America is suggesting we might have to accept? That's the question people want to know if we're taking back control.
What you're suggesting is that we have to stick with whatever the European Union tells us we have in terms of legacy. We'll make the right decisions for the UK. We will decide for the UK what is best, not what is best for the US, not what is best for the European Union, but what's best for the United Kingdom, and we will take
and the US
all those
model
areas
might be
into
the
account.
better model for us than the current EU regulations model.
The British model will be the best model for Britain.